Okay, so now we've shown you kind of how to do this: deploy an InfoPath form, publish a document connection library with UD6 files in it, publish the form template via an administrative template in central administration, so your form templates and activate it in the site collection, and create a test form library and associate that with the content type of the form that's been published, and also create your projects custom list as well, so that you can then refer to that in your data connection library and reference that in your InfoPath form. I want to show you guys how to do that from a Visual Studio approach rather than doing this all manually. And the main reason is if you had 200 forms, you don't really want to keep repeating this over and over again, so you want to try and make this a repeatable process. And also from the fact that you want to be able to do this and capture it all in source control, so it makes it easier to run this through. So we're going to open up our Visual Studio environment, and we're going to create a new WIS builder project, or WSP builder, or whatever you're going to want to call it. We'll just call this InfoPath form project for now, and I'm going to put that in my scratch place. Now, because we're doing this as a solution package, there's going to be essentially we want to be able to create a feature that's going to go and provision off the data connection library, the projects list, and then there'll be a separate feature that's going to go and deploy the InfoPath form. So we'll do the InfoPath form deployment bit first. So if we go back to the page that we started with here, in this form structure here, you'll see that we've got our form source, which is our XSM file, and then we've also got the deployed form there. Now, in this example, what I've done is the form source in our case would actually be these files, because we've actually blown out that to save as source as opposed to just working with an XSM file. And the form that you're actually going to be publishing and wrapping up in a feature and deploying is the XSN file, which is the equivalent to the releases that we're pushing through here. So when we do build this project, we really need to ensure that this is, whatever the release is the one that now sits in this project structure here. So the way that we do that is we're actually going to effectively branch this entire thing every time we do a release. So we branch the whole project, because we might the reason we branch the whole lot in TFS or whatever source control repository you're using is because you may change the projects library. So there might be a requirement now that there's a new list that's created in here, and we want to make sure that we represent that in having a new list in this dependency feature that we've created. So we need to branch the whole lot rather than how we have it in our manual way, which is kind of we're just releasing an individual form and we're doing everything else manually. So the first thing we're going to do based on this structure is create this InfoPath deployment sample feature, which is going to include the XSN that we're going to then deploy without using central administration directly. So if I come in here, and we're just going to create or add a new item to this WIS builder project, and we'll go down to the WSP builder, and I'm just going to create a blank feature, and we'll call this the info part. Actually, we'll just call this gender info path form feature. Let me add that. Now I'm just going to check to see what scope we did that at. I'm pretty sure we want to do that at site collection level. So this wizard here, what that actually does is it's creating me some files. So you'll see here it's created me a feature.xml file and an elements.xml file. So if we look at our feature file, what we're saying here is this is the name of the feature, and this is the scope, which is going to be site, which is site collection level, and we're associating that we've got another file within this feature, elements.xml, which is referenced here, which actually has nothing in it at the minute. So just going back to our tutorial, you'll see that we actually need to we actually need to have a feature receiver added in here. Oh, sorry, that's for the. Oh no, yeah, we do. And what that one is actually it's an out-of-the-box one within the InfoPath namespace within MOS. So we just cut and paste that, and that goes inside the feature as an attribute. Let's delete those numbers. And what basically happens here is that this is the equivalent of like an event receiver that fires, but when you switch on a feature. So when I deploy this feature and I activate this feature, it's actually going to run that class for me. And what that class does is it looks for these properties. So if I just copy those properties go inside here. And you'll see that there's a feature name that it's looking for, and that's the key. So we just need to grab that through inside there. And what that does is it hooks up all this bit so that it looks for any forms in here and publishes them. So if we go back here now, you'll see that there should be a full code listing of that feature as part of this. Nope, I didn't do that. So what we'll do is we'll go to the reference for that, which is the Hill mail exposed. And you see that Sahil's got the full thing. So you'll see there he's got that receiver thing switched on, and what he's actually done is added that form as an element file here. So when we come in here and we have a look, we just add that form. Now we need to get that form into here. So I think, what did we call it? It was the agenda form, wasn't it? Agenda template. So we just need to call that agenda template the XSN like that. But we need to now get that file in here. Now before we can do that, we really need to move our source into this folder. So what I tend to do is I'll create a new folder in here called InfoPath. Let's call it Agenda InfoPath form. And I'm just going to copy all of those files into here. So now that's kind of encapsulated in here. And just to test that works, I'm just going to open that folder up, and I'll just shut this one down. We'll open this in InfoPath, and you'll often get this error if you move InfoPath files around. So what it's saying is to make sure that everything's working properly, you need to republish this. So you just go OK on that. We'll save that just so that we know where we are. But all we need to do now, okay, so it gets itself in a bit of a tiz. So what you need to do is just do save as source and save over the top of it. So I put that in my documents, in projects, put up form project, and the agenda there. So there you go, that's probably the safer way of moving InfoPath form rather than dragging it into Visual Studio like that. So now that's in there and we know that's okay. We can now do the same thing again, publish to a network location, but this time, rather than publishing into these folders, we're going to go and publish it into the project. So we go into projects, our InfoPath form project, and rather than going into where the source is, we're going to go and put it in our feature folder. Click OK. Go next, delete that, publish. And in here now, if I open up here and I do show all items in Visual Studio, that's the published form, and we can now include that as part of that project. So we have our source files here, and we have our InfoPath form, and we also have all the mechanics to then deploy that form into the farm environment. So with the power of WSP Builder, I can now do a build on that. And what you'll see in that list is that it's actually encapsulated that as part of that package, as well as the feature and the elements folders, which has given us all the information on how that's working. So if we now go and have a look at what's actually been generated there, it actually generates them here in the root of the project folder. A WSP file is basically a cab file, so what we can do is copy that file and just rename it to a cab file. And if I now go in there, you can actually see what's been put in that cab file. So you can see there's a DLL that's been placed in there, as well as a feature elements file, the manifest file, which basically is the first thing it reads within the WSP file to find out what's in there, as well as our published XSN file. So I'm just going to delete that just so we're nice and clean. Now once that's done, I'm just going to double check that's all the steps. I'm pretty sure it is. Oh no, we actually do need to take this as well, which is our module. So you can see here, if I just copy that as plain text in our elements file, we need to just put some more instructions in here. Now what these instructions do is says that the name obviously is XN, that's just really used for this module. It's not going to, SharePoint's not going to use that. And the URL is it's a form server template, and we just got to get that name exactly the same as that. And that's the name we want it to be. So that's the name that it's looking for the file within the package, and the URL is the name that it's going to be created as. So effectively I could actually change this to InfoPath form if I wanted to on the server, but we want to try and keep it all the same so it's all referenced the same, otherwise it does start to get a bit confusing. So what that's going to do now is it's actually going to, when we activate this feature, it's going to trigger that elements manifest, read that elements manifest and go, right, okay, I've got to deploy this file into the form server templates library. And you'll see here that what Sahil's done is actually he's calling this all manually on a server, and you can see he's a big fan of WSP Builder, and it's the same as I am. And what he's just saying is that if you create a forms library and go and add the content type, you'll be able to pick that form from that list. So what we're going to do now is we're going to deploy this to our dev environment just to make sure this actually works. But first off, what I want to do is clean out what we've done manually via the other process. So the easiest way to do that for now is to come in here, and it's to actually remove this, all of this stuff. So I'm going to just clean out, just so we know it's definitely this that's doing it. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to, sorry, that's, didn't allow me to. Oh, it won't let me delete it because I've got one. Oh no, I can delete, but it probably won't because I've got one in use. Maybe. Let's have a look. So you just delete that content type from that list. Yeah, it won't let me use it because I'm in use. So we've just got to delete the forms that exist in that library. So I'll just delete that one form, and we'll go back into that list and click on that one and remove it from here. And that cleans out that content type from being referenced inside that form library. And then what we can do is we can actually, I'm going to do this and deactivate it. So now I'm doing everything in reverse. So now I'm rolling out the fact that that form library, that form is available to the demo site collection. And the reason I do all this is I could have actually just gone here and gone delete, remove form. but it actually in the site collection keeps all those references. It doesn't go and clean up after itself. So by doing this, I'm actually making sure that I'm cleaning everything else up. And that's why when you see SDS ADM commands, you'll often see that it's not just a add, deploy, activate. It's always a deactivate, retract, delete, then the add, deploy, activate. So that it cleans itself up first, then pushes it through. So now that's not in there. We can actually test that's not in there by going and having a look at our site features. So you'll see now if I go and have a look in our site features that the agenda thing's not in there anymore. And just double check that it's not in the site collection. You see there now it's not activated there. It's a site collection feature, so it's not turned on. So now what we can do is we can now just remove that form from the server entirely. You'll see now that it's actually deleting that. So what that's doing now is that's actually deleting the fact that there's a feature there, and what we can see is if we went in the Hive is it's actually created its own feature for you, and you'll be able to see that form in there. So if I just refresh that now, hopefully it does that pretty quickly. Still going. And you'll see if I ran the enum form templates at the command line, that will actually disappear from here as well once it's deleted it. There you go. So the reason we get service unavailable is because it's an iOS reset. So that must mean it's just going through the process of cleaning itself up. There you go. So now it's not in here, and once this site comes back up after iOS has started again, there you go. It's now loading that page back up. You'll see that that form won't exist in here, so we've completely cleaned that out now. I'm just going to check Sahil's just to make sure that the feature I've scoped right. Yep. So he's done the feature at that level as well, which is fine. So we've done that now, and that's not in there. So now what I want to do is actually want to deploy this from WSP Builder. So what I'm going to do is right click on here, and you'll see there's a deploy command. Now that's just the same as what Sahil was doing in script. So you guys may have done that before. What you'll see here is if I come in here and go deploy, and it'll ask me if I want to rebuild because it changed. So I go yep. So it's going to build the WSP package again for me. But what the nice bit about what the WSP Builder does now is that it's now going through and it's installing that WSP package into the server, and you see now it's done. Now the way I can check whether that's in there or not is if I go into Central Administration and go to Operations, you'll see that if I go to Solution Management here, so this is where you manage all your solution packages, you'll see that the InfoPath form project is currently deploying, and you'll see that this form-agenda template, this was the automatic one that SharePoint built for you when you added it via Central Admin. You'll see it's not deployed. So we could actually go in here and, again, iOS is resetting because it's in the middle of doing a deployment. We can actually go in there and actually remove that package as well. So what you'll find is if you deploy things via Central Admin a lot, the forms templates, you'll get lots and lots of solutions in there with kind of odd names, because it does actually have to create a solution package when you add them as an administrative form. So in a way, by taking this approach, you're actually being able to dictate what naming standards are used. So now you'll see that that's been deployed globally. So in a development environment, WSP Builder just pushes it out so that it's available on all site collections. With that now, if we go into Application Management, Manage Form Templates, you'll see that it's actually pushed that agenda template through. So you can see the power of me, from my Visual Studio IDE, being able to manage those things.
Now you've done all this locally, haven't you?
This is all, yeah, locally on my machine. But you'll see here that it's, even though we did delete that form and we retracted everything, it's still hanging on to the versioning. Now that versioning is actually coming from within the information within the properties of the file, which you can't see here. I'll find out where that. It's going to bug me now. I think it's inside here.
Versions.
Yeah, so you can see that's actually pulling that through from there as
and
well.
It increments all the time.
Yeah, so every time you save, it's doing that. So that's deployed that, but from a WIS package. Now, okay, that's great. That you could, that's not too cool. But if I make a change to this, the source form now, and then I do a publish here and go through this process and overwrite that, and then do another. I'll do an upgrade. That's going to go and do an upgrade to that form for you, which is quite neat. Now, the next benefit of that is that, right, well, we've got this WIS package now on our file system, and what's really cool with WSP Builder is we can actually create deployment folder. And what that does is it builds us a WSP Builder file. Refresh this, and if we go into our bin folder, you'll see there's a new deploy folder here. Inside that, it's actually created me a folder which I can give to an administrator, and it's pushed the WSP file into there, but it's also allowed me to go, and it's created me the scripts automatically to actually then go and run this on a farm, calling the STS ADM with the correct parameters already for me, so I don't have to write it myself. So it's very powerful, it's very quick to do. So you can imagine if I wanted to now go and create another InfoPath form, I would simply go in here in the same project or whatever. I could either go in here and create another folder and create an expenses InfoPath form, save as source on that, publish to this folder, add the XSN here, and add it as another entry in there, and you'd be deploying two files. Or if you wanted to create a different project with its own separate one, you'd simply just come in here and rename that file, delete the existing one, and just delete or rename that mapping, and all the plumbing's done for you. So you see the benefit in this approach is that it's a very reusable structure.
If you're going to have multiple InfoPath forms in there, so you're deploying more than one InfoPath form.
Yeah.
If you somewhere down the track, if you only have to make a change to one.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So, and this is why I tend to do things quite discreetly. So rather than having thousands of InfoPath forms in one project, I mean that was a bit of an exaggeration, but I would try and keep them as discreet as that.
Okay.
Because you don't tend to update forms in bulk, you tend to update them in a business process on its own. So yeah, there are risks in deploying one big WSP file with 100 files in it, because technically in a business environment you need to then, if you even if you only made a change to one form, you need to then go and run all your integration tests against all of your forms. So if you're only making a deployment where it's only affecting the WSP is only affecting one InfoPath form, your testing only has to cover what's going to change in that farm. If there was like 20 forms, you've got to make sure you go and make sure that in test that all those forms are still working, based on the fact you've deployed a new version. So I tend to recommend just using one, but the beauty is now you've got this project that you can just go and copy and make another one exactly the same. Now there are some things you need to change, because obviously you need to rename that file, and what that's going to mean is that in a few other places you're going to need to rename it where that thing's being referenced, i.e. you're going to need to change your feature name so that's unique, and you need to make your GUID unique. But you saw how quickly it was me to spin that up from scratch. You could just follow, cutting and pasting from this page to make sure you've got everything you need and you're away. So that's deployed that, but what you'll see is that if I come in here and do a refresh, Now what do we call this feature? We call this InfoPath agenda InfoPath form feature. Now, because this is on IS reset as part of that deployment, because this is the first time we've hit the site collection, it's the first time it's had a request from IIS, so that's why it's loading it. So you'll see now that that's available now. And if I activate that feature and now go back up to your site content and go into my test form and go into my library settings and add a content type, you'll see that the agenda template content type's there.
Can this be automated as well?
So this part here with adding that, yeah, that can be, which is the next stage. So in this walkthrough here, what we've covered here is this feature here.
Right.
But the next step would be to then, we want to deploy those UDCX files that exist in our data connection library. So we need to deploy that stuff. So the next step is to create that second feature inside this folder, which we'll do in a bit.